Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another reading vlog, and this time I'm doing a mystery book reading vlog. So I recently went on a family trip with my mom and my aunt and uncle who live near us. Just like a little overnight trip to a kind of city nearby that has some cool shopping and some cool like old buildings and things like that. So we went over there and we were just kind of like wandering around, hanging out, and while we were there I of course decided that I wanted to go into the local indie bookstore. It was a place I'd been before, but I hadn't been there in several years. So I wanted to go check out the bookstore, and I went and did that while they went off and wandered around themselves. And I discovered that the bookstore had a blind date with a books. And I picked up this one because I just found the description delightful. So it says Victorian Gothic Scooby-Doo, staged seances and real ghosts, maybe, crashing waves and perilous tides, London slums and a sprawling country house, atmosphere for days. Really what got me was this Victorian Scooby-Doo, Victorian Gothic Scooby-Doo. That really convinced me that I needed to read whatever was in this particular brown package, and yeah, had to pick it up. Was very excited to buy something there, and then I couldn't wait to get home to open it. So I opened the book in the car. There will be a clip here of me opening the book. So I have already opened this. It's already like torn across the back, and I thought it would be fun to make a video opening this and then reading it to see how I feel about it. So the book in question, if I can get it back out of the paper, you'll have seen up here is A Dreadful Splendor by B.R. Myers, and this sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. This one is following Genevieve Timmons, who is a fake medium who is basically ripping off wealthy mourners by tricking them into believing that she's connecting with their deceased loved ones, and also committing a little bit of theft on the side. But one day she gets caught and she's put in prison. She seems to have some past crimes, and there's a threat that she's going to be hanged, but somebody shows up to offer her a different path, a different outcome. It's this guy who works for a young lord whose fiance has just died, and the lord is just convinced that his fiance has been murdered, and the guy's servant wants her to come and basically fake a seance and convince this guy to kind of move on. But when she gets there, she realizes that this young lord is not at all what she was imagining, and he is very sane and very convinced that his fiance was murdered. So he asks her to work with him to fake a haunting instead, to get the killer to reveal themselves, because that's the only way he sees justice being done. So the two of them are working together for this fake haunting, except that creepy things start happening that aren't in their control. So it's kind of a question of like, is the haunting real, or is there some other thing going on here as well? Sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun, and it does sound very much like a kind of Scooby-Doo-like plot. So I'm really excited to give this one a try. I've heard some good things about it. Haven't seen people reading it recently, but I think when it first came out I was seeing some good kind of early reviews of it. So I am really excited to give this one a try, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I think my plan, since I'm only going to be talking about one book for this video, is I'm going to check in kind of at the start and then probably like the halfway point and at the end. I feel like that's a reasonable way to kind of split things up. That's how I've done it in some of my other vlogs, and that seems to be decent. I don't talk too much. I do talk a lot, but I don't talk too much if I break it up that way. So I think I'm gonna go get started on this, and I'll check back in with you when I've got my kind of initial thoughts. Surprise, I've actually already started it, so I have my initial thoughts already. I don't know why I decided to do this that way. Just bear with me. But yeah, I've actually read chapter 1 and part of chapter 2, and I realize that this is very early to be giving my initial thoughts on the story, but the opening chapter is just such a good hook. We follow Genevieve as she is faking this seance for a family of wealthy people who clearly are looking for something left behind by somebody who's passed away. It's clear that they believe there's some sort of like fortune to be had, or maybe like a secret will. There's something hidden away, and they need to know where the key to this thing is. So she is faking a seance to basically swindle them out of their jewels while they're not looking, and she gets caught and is sent to prison, and it sets up that she has definitely committed some sort of horrible crime in her past, because a constable shows up and accuses her of several horrible things, and at the end of this chapter she says, "What could I say to defend myself? It's all true." So without going into any further detail, I'm not going to give you spoilers for any other part of this book. I just wanted to talk about that first chapter, and it's also like the first 5 pages or something, so it's this much of the book. But that hook at the end of that chapter was so good. I'm so interested to find out more about Genevieve and what it is that she's supposed to have done in her past. It looks like she also is in like a pretty precarious position, so I can see why she would take whatever this offer she's going to be given is. So I'm excited. I'm really enjoying this kind of early section. I think that the writing is really nice. I'm enjoying the like actual reading experience and the flow of the writing. So I think this is going to be really good. I'm very excited to continue on with it. And now, instead of faking you out and being like, surprise, I've actually read more of it, I am actually at like chapter 2, and I'm gonna go spend the rest of this evening reading, and I'll check back in with you guys when I have my 50% thoughts, unless I get too absorbed and read all the way to the end. It's taken me way too long, but I am finally past the 100-page mark in A Dreadful Splendor, so I think I can give you a better description of this book now that I could in my first check-in. We're following Genevieve Timmons, who is a fake spiritualist, and she is arrested but given an opportunity to escape the gallows when a lawyer shows up and offers her legal representation in exchange for helping him convince his primary employer, Mr. Pemberton, that Mr. Pemberton's fiance's death was a suicide and that she's like at peace on the other side. However, when she arrives at the manor, it's this like crumbling seaside manor. When she arrives, she meets Mr. Pemberton, and he tells her that he believes that his fiancée, Lady Audra, was murdered, and he wants her to try and get a killer to confess by holding a fake seance and convincing the entire like household that Lady Audra is haunting them as like revenge for her death. So Genevieve has got a lot of kind of dueling expectations on her. She's having to manage the requests from these two different people who have various levels of kind of power over her due to her criminal background and her worries about being hanged. So that's kind of the setup we get, and I am enjoying this so far, but I'm definitely having a bit of a mixed experience with it. I think that the atmosphere is really creepy and really good. I'm enjoying this kind of crumbling Victorian manor on the cliffs over the sea. I think that that part is really well done, and I also really like the mystery. We are told that Lady Audra was in a room that was locked from the outside and guarded the night that she disappeared and died, and so how did she get out? Did somebody take her out of there? Did she leave voluntarily? Like, what actually happened? So I'm really interested to see how that mystery is going to play out, and I'm enjoying just the manor itself and the kind of different like character tensions within the manor. Like, we have kind of the overbearing, scary steward of the house. We have, you know, some romance among the different people working in the house. We have the tensions between Mr. Pemberton and the other members of the family, and it's just like a lot of those pieces going on that I think are interesting. However, I think some of the character relationships are a little weird, and some of the characters are a little inconsistent, and a lot of the writing is kind of stiff but also repetitive. And I think those things are dragging down my enjoyment just a little bit. I'll start with the writing just because I think it's such a small thing, but it's kind of driving me nuts. But it's like the author has come up with a couple of descriptions that she really likes, and she just keeps using them over and over and over again. So like, this one that's really grating on me is that one of the first times that Genevieve interacts with Mr. Pemberton, she's in his study and she like thinks to herself, he was handsome, that was certain, but his curt manner had tarnished his appearance, making it impossible to see him as anything more than a demanding person who felt entitled to order people at a whim. That's such a long way of saying that. I feel like it would have been stronger if it had said making it impossible to see him as anything more than a bully or something along those lines. It's just like this very drawn out way of saying it, but that bit of information gets repeated over and over again. So like every time he's on page, every time Genevieve has to interact with him, we're being told that she just can't get over, she can't find him attractive because he's just such a jerk. He's so mean to people. He just likes to order people around. He's constantly ordering people around. And we're just told that over and over and over again, like every single time she interacts with him, and it's kind of driving me nuts. But then there's like other instances of it as well. So like in the bit that I'm currently reading, she's wearing a nice new dress, and she's extremely aware of the fact that her boots are scuffed because she's wearing her own shoes but wearing this new dress, and it's like a way of describing the way that she's feeling out of place amongst the kind of wealth and opulence on display at this manor and the kind of different people who are clearly of a higher social status than she is. But her being out of place is this constant like, are the toes of my boots visible? The toes of my boots are visible, aren't they? I'm so aware of the toes of my boots. And it's just, again, kind of driving me nuts. There's lots of like these little repetitive moments like that. So I think the combination of like some of the writing feeling really drawn out and stiff, and some of it just being the same images over and over and over again, or same descriptions, is grating on me a little bit as I'm reading. It's not enough to like keep me from reading it, but it is definitely enough to keep me from giving this 5 stars for sure. The other thing is that I think the characters are kind of inconsistent and weird. For one thing, the banter isn't bantering. I'm pretty sure there's supposed to be a romance between Genevieve and Mr. Pemberton, but every interaction they have is just so awkward and uncomfortable, and I don't think that they speak like human beings to each other. So it's just like really weird every time they interact, and I'm just not getting any sense of chemistry between the two of them. And besides that, they both seem kind of like inconsistent in the way we're being told that they behave and the way that we're actually seeing them behave. And I think for Mr. Pemberton, it's really clear in the way that like she sees him as being this kind of demanding person who's constantly ordering people around. He's just like rude, he's a jerk, he doesn't give any respect to the people who work in his home. But also we see him interacting with the staff and he's just like normal and reasonable. He's not being a jerk to the staff in any clear way. So it's weird that we're being told that he's really demanding and mean, but we're not being shown any instances of him being like really demanding and mean. And then I think similarly for Genevieve, she is supposed to be this like kind of skeptical person because she is herself a fake spiritualist. She was raised by her mother, who was also a fake spiritualist and storyteller, and was trained under a fortune teller, and was trained under a fake fortune teller who like kind of became a grandmother figure to Genevieve. So like she comes from this line of fake fortune tellers and spiritualists, and yet there's this like prophecy from a fortune teller that she got when she was young that talks about how she's gonna die by drowning, and she just believes it so much, and she's constantly concerned about being next to the ocean. And I just don't quite understand why somebody who is so skeptical about fortune telling and the existence of ghosts and things like that, because of her own profession as like a fake spiritualist and fortune teller, I don't understand why she feels so strongly about this prophecy from another fortune teller. And we're not given any information, at least up to this point in 100 pages, that explains why this fortune teller is different from the other fortune teller she's interacted with. So I don't quite get that, and it just feels, again, inconsistent with the character. Like, she's skeptical, but also she's not, and I don't get that. Like, people have internal inconsistencies, but these are much more a case of like we're being told one thing and shown a different thing, and I don't think in a way that's intentional. It's not supposed to be like, oh, there's a disconnect between how this character thinks they are and how they actually are, or something like that. It just feels like it's inconsistent, so it's not totally working for me. And overall, I think that the mystery is going to be strong enough to pull me through the rest of the book, but I am having kind of a mixed experience with the actual like reading itself. I managed to get to the halfway point last night, and I'm finding the main character increasingly frustrating to read. Also, there's some weird stuff that happens where I'm like, why isn't this being talked about more? I am still liking the mystery. However, I think at this point, I have a pretty solid guess for what the like twist reveal is going to be. I'm pretty sure I know what's going on at this point. And I don't remember if I mentioned this in my first update or my previous update, but there's these sections in here that are diary entries from the victim, from the murder victim. And I think when I was first reading this, I was like, I kind of like this. We're kind of getting her perspective, and we're hearing about her from all these other people, but we actually get to see like what she thought of her life and like the way things were going. I'm now, I think, leaning in the opposite direction on that. I think that this book would be stronger without those sections, because they're giving us a ton of information that I think is what is led me to go, I think I know what's going on here. But also there's stuff that's being revealed in those diary entries that then is treated as some sort of twist reveal for our protagonist, Genevieve. But it's like, but I already knew this. Why am I getting this information a second time? And some of that information that she gets, I'm also finding annoying that she's not picking up on things sooner as well. In particular, there's a reveal, happens pretty quickly through the diary entries, and then right after we get the official, like, this is what's happening in the diary entries, Genevieve gets this piece of information from a character directly. Character specifically says to her, like, this is what's happening in this instance. And Genevieve is supposed to be really good at reading people. Like, that's her personality. She's a con woman, so like she's supposed to be good at reading people and guessing like what they want to hear, or being able to know things about them that they're not sharing openly. And the book is happy to make it look like she's good at reading people until it's inconvenient for a dramatic reveal. So then she is just like taken aback by information that feels like it should have been really obvious. A lot of times it's stuff that like I guessed upon seeing a character, or like she's given pieces of information that she should have been able to put together if she was actually that good at reading people. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this without spoiling it. But yeah, there's a specific piece of information that I think is really obvious, but Genevieve just like misses it until we get the dramatic reveal from that character telling her about the thing. There's also a character that I feel like is pretty obviously lying to her, and she's just taking what he's saying at face value. And so I'm finding that a little bit frustrating. Like, again, I feel like if she is so good at reading people, she should be able to identify that this person is perhaps not being genuine with her, because his answers are just like too convenient for the things that she's asking him. And I'm finding it frustrating. Also, the things that he's saying contradict with what other characters have said. So again, it feels like it's very obvious that he's lying to her, or at least somebody's lying to her, but I'm pretty sure it's him. And she's just not picking it up at all. And then kind of on the other end of the spectrum, I still don't understand why she thinks that the Mr. Pemberton found out his name is Gareth. I spent most of the first half of the book going, why can't I remember Mr. Pemberton's first name? Turns out it's because it was never said on page. His name is Gareth. But, Gareth. I don't know why she thinks he's such a terrible person, because she's constantly like, oh, he's so demanding and a bully and he's awful. And he never really acts that awful at all on page. She like walks into his house and he's not happy about it, but he's not as awful as you would have expected based on that description. And then he spends a lot of the book just being like very obviously head over heels for her, and her just not seeing it, not getting it. So I'm finding her just kind of frustrating as a character. I don't love when you have a character who's supposed to be good at reading people, because I think it's not very often that it's done well, where like they get to find out information without having those shocking reveals. I don't know. I don't know that like having a character who's good at reading people meshes well with having a lot of dramatic reveals, and so it just comes across as like an inconsistency in the character, that they're supposed to be good at reading people, but they can't be if the book is going to have those dramatic moments. So I don't love when a character's like personality is good at reading people, because I don't think it's done well very often. I am, however, still enjoying the mystery. I'm curious to find out if my guess for what's happening is correct. One, because I'll feel very smart and cool for having figured it out. But two, I think it's an interesting direction for this to take, and it creates like some additional complications for how did the locked room situation happen anyway? Like, how did she end up outside of this locked room? I am curious to see how all of that is going to play out. I'm not loving the romance in here. I just don't get the chemistry between, what's her name? I've just said it several times, I've forgotten it, Genevieve and Gareth, but you know, I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm gonna see what happens. I'm gonna try and finish this tonight, but I don't know if I will. I've got about 200 pages left. I'm in the last half here, but yeah, it's just mixed experience so far, more so than I thought based on the description I heard of the book. But I'm just finding that like some pieces of this are really strong and some pieces are just not. I've done it. I finished A Dreadful Splendor. Read the last 200 pages, and I will give the book this. It is a quick read. However, my kind of mixed experience very much continued in the last half of the book, and ultimately I think I'm feeling pretty meh about this one. I don't think I'm going to be keeping it on my shelves. There is one good scene in the last half that I really liked, that really was like the one moment where I kind of bought the romance, but the rest of it was okay. I think my biggest issues with the latter half is that, for one thing, Genevieve really just keeps missing really obvious connections, and it just takes her so long to put the pieces together when all of the pieces are right in front of her. And it was just really frustrating to see her just like stumble through all of these connections when she's supposed to be like really clever and observant and all these things, and just watching her just fail to make connections and fail to figure out what's going on was really frustrating. I think that was kind of heightened by the inclusion of Lady Audra's diary entries. I kept going back and forth on whether I thought they needed to be included, because there is something that happens in the last half that kind of makes that make more sense, but I don't know. I just kind of went back and forth on whether I felt like those were making it better or worse. And ultimately I think I just feel kind of ambivalent about it. But yeah, I just was frustrated with Genevieve, and then I think that one, I was very correct about what was going on with the ending. I like understood a lot of what was happening. I think obvious villain was obvious to every, or at least, well, I was about to say to everyone but Genevieve, but that's not true because nobody else figured it out either. It was very obvious to me who was involved and what was going on, but just Genevieve just was not getting it. And I found that so annoying. But I was glad that I had figured it out because I felt smart that I had figured it out, but also that made it very like frustrating seeing her just miss it over and over again. Also, I don't love the ending. Something happens with a specific character in the ending. Not in like, there's like an epilogue that has some additional like what happens to all of the characters after the end of this kind of particular episode, but the actual like resolution of the mystery when we kind of get the villain reveal, there's one character specifically that we have been told is one way, and the divergence between everything we have seen of them up to that point and the way that they are at the end just really rubbed me the wrong way. I don't like the ending that that character got, and I feel like there's an element of that character and that character's experience that doesn't get addressed that left me with kind of an icky feeling, if that makes sense. Like, it felt like there was maybe some sort of mental health thing going on, but the book, obviously it's set in Victorian era, like that wasn't necessarily going to be picked up on or like described, but it felt like one character was portrayed as being kind of basically insane, and I really didn't like the way that that turned out for that character. I felt like that was kind of a cop-out. It spent a lot of time humanizing a character, and then we got this kind of cop-out of like, well, they're insane now, so oh well. And I just didn't enjoy that. So yeah, mostly kind of a miss for me, and I'm kind of sad I don't have a better review for this book because I was really excited about it based on that like blind date with the book premise, what I had seen on the cover, or on the like the paper before I bought it. So yeah, I'm just kind of disappointed in this one, and I'm sad I don't have like a more positive review for you this go around. What this does tell me is that one, blind date with a book is very effective at selling a book. It gives you these like kind of quick, easy descriptors for the book and gives you a kind of a sense of the vibe. And I do think that the vibe that was described on that piece of paper was accurate to the book, but ultimately like the book itself just took a good premise and kind of fell flat with it. So yeah, unfortunate, but I think I do actually still have some books I need to donate. I've been working on getting some books sorted out to donate, and I have not yet taken the box that I was going to take to my local indie bookstore. I will toss this one in there so that they can sell it on to somebody who will hopefully love it a lot more than I do. I can see why people would like this. I think there's some really good elements here. I think if you read like the romance slightly differently than I did, you could probably really like it. It just didn't work for me the way it was developed. It just felt a little bit abrupt. So yeah, I didn't love it, but I can see why somebody would love this book, and I would love to get this into the hands of somebody who will. So I'm gonna go ahead and pass that one on, and it was a success, and at least that I read this one pretty quickly after acquiring it. So, you know, I feel good about that. So that's pretty much all I have for you today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting at least once a week, occasionally twice a week, but I hope to see you in the next video, and bye.